Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and I'd already recorded an episode today, but I just couldn't get enough of a certain show. And it's really kind of striking because a couple of years ago, this same thing happened when I read the manga. And as you can see from the title, I'm talking about the Quintessential Quintuplets. So, a couple of years ago, I watched the first season of the anime, and it caught me off guard to the point where I just bum-rushed through the entire rest of the manga without even waiting for the second season. Waited some time, kept putting it off because I knew the second season had started. And I just kept thinking about rewatching it and finally got around to it. I went through a phase of watching new shows, but then I always do a rewatch phase where I rewatch some things. And this was kind of the first one that I wanted to do because I specifically wanted to not only see the beginning of the anime again, but to get through the second season and the movie, which acted as the ending. And obviously I'm going to spoil a lot. I'm going to have the spoiler tag for the video, and I'm going to spoil my thoughts on things. I'm not going to do this with any, backdrops, and normally I do, a primer to weigh my thoughts and things, but this is one of those gut feeling sorts of things. And is it the best show I've ever done? No. Is it the best thing I've ever watched? No. And I don't think it's going to replace Spy Family or Bebop, but it is certainly up there. And I would hazard a guess because of how the manga made me feel and how the anime made me feel. Regardless of whether it was rushed, I think the ending is kind of rushed. There are reasons for that I will get into. The way it made me feel while watching it, the fact that I would spend days and days thinking, I just want to finish this. It's one of the few times, I don't know if I've ever really experienced that sort of thing. And it speaks to how well its core premise works and how fast of a show and how fast of a manga it is and how it processes things. Really what it boils down to is this was a pseudo harem / murder mystery masquerading, well, not murder mystery, but mystery novel masquerading as a harem the entire time, trying to figure out there was one answer. And I think part of the reason that I got swept up in the ending the first time was wanting to know who it was. And the anime, the same thing. Would it be, it's the same person, it's a different person? Did they change the endings? Did they have separate endings? Did they do choose your own adventure kinds of things with different episodes? And, or would the movie just go about its merry way? And that sort of uncertainty was one of those things that just kept me just spiraling over and over and over in my head to the point I couldn't get this show out of my head. I couldn't get the manga out of my head when I read it as well. That is hard to come by, especially for stupid harem shows like this, because I can usually think of stupid harem shows and not think about it much. But there was just something about this one, and I don't know where it was, and I hope explaining the characters, because really not a lot happens in the show, if I'm being honest. They build up the characters, they build up most of the romances, and they keep things hidden. They fall through a lot of the cracks that any show like this would have, a lot of the tropes, but at the same time, they know what they're focusing on, and while I don't think the ending ends up working because they try to turn the movie into an ending because the manga ended up kind of rushed, it still proceeds in a way that feels so striking, so interesting, so just lovely to watch. Those are the words I'm trying to express. So, what is the story? Well, bare bones, 5 sisters look exactly alike. In back, like 4 or 5 years earlier, they all have, bright pinkish red hair. They all wear the same thing. One of them meets a boy. We're not told who that is. And that boy grows up to become the main character, Futaro Uesugi. And he gets a tutoring job with the quintuplets. He gets asked by some random girl that shows up and says, "Hey, you're being a bit of a dick. Stop being a dick." And then he just kind of messes with her. So Itsuki's the first one he meets, and you don't think anything of it, but then she ends up introducing the other characters. You got Ichika, Miku, Yotsuba, Nino, and Itsuki herself, the Nakano sisters, the 5 quintuplets. And the show proceeds in kind of the duality. The backdrop is they're stupid, he needs to teach them, he's a bit of a dick in most cases, but slowly starts to understand them and feel for them, and they go about different things. As things progress, the veneer starts to shed, and the real answer is one of them is going to get the happy ending, the other 4 are not. And the show tries to do its best to balance it. It's even, I think the manga's name or the Japanese name was called 5 Equal Brides. Now, whether that was always the intention or not, I'm not sure. In reality, 3 of them get the most, and then 2 get kind of hit by the wayside. But then you don't exactly... The beauty of this is that nobody ever feels like a lost cause until it's too late. The show gives you enough to go on to where everybody is still viable, and the rug pulls out at the end, and you think, okay, well, there's still a reason why this person. A lot of the annoyance from fans, and again, take this from Reddit, I looked all this stuff up after I watched the movie just to get the general gist of vibes and everything. That's where the rushed ending and whatever, that's kind of the majority feel, and I do agree. But I don't want this to come off as one of the, oh my god, I hated the ending because the girl I like didn't win, right? So, who are the 5? Well, in Futura's case, he's kind of a jerk. He's just studying all the time, doesn't really care, kind of taking this for granted. But you realize that he's trying to do this for money because his family's poor as shit. They're in debt, and he needs the money. So he's taking this in stride and saying, I will help your grades. The problem is that the 5 sisters, their stepdad is this either famous doctor or just super well-to-do, and he's a bit of a dick. Dickhead, and the stern father figure and whatever, and very overprotective, but the one that doesn't care about his step daughters, basically. Gave them a perfect life, but wasn't really a part of it. So the 5 sisters really took care of themselves. They give you backdrops of their mother, who was a teacher, and it informs a couple of the characters later on. But suffice it to say, she passes away. They have to take care of themselves because their dad's watching them from afar, essentially. So these 5 people don't think anything of Futaro at first. And why would they? They just met. So Itsuki gets first, and her thing is that she's just there. She's a little bit awkward. She wants to study, but doesn't know how, but doesn't take things in stride, but she's just like weird, right? She doesn't interact properly. The most things you get from her, like she eats a lot of food. She's kind of awkward and doesn't want to have dissension and whatever, but trying to take over kind of the mother role after a while, and she kind of ends up in a backdrop, and it becomes a thing where and the show is predicated on her being kind of the normal-ish one. Normal in the sense that, yeah, she sounds awkward when talking to Futaro, but they end up growing friendly-ish. But the defining characteristics don't overwhelm you, and I think that's part of the benefit, because they seem to get along sort of well, but it doesn't overwhelm you because a lot of the others are such forceful personalities in different ways that it takes you a little bit of time to realize Itsuki's there, but she exists for a reason, as a balance point. The next one, and kind of the first one the story focuses on, is Miku, and Miku is the fan favorite because, as I can attest, internet nerds are closet, annoying, quiet, depressed. Just, we want everything, but we don't know how to be. We are introverted as hell. I mask it very well, don't I? Anyway, being introverted as hell has problems. I will attest to that, and that's why, personally, too, I ascribe to the Miku theory. But Miku works in an interesting way, is that she's the meek one. She is the weak one constitution-wise. She is trying to have feelings for Futaro right away. In fact, they do the Japanese custom of having names, and I think, honestly, she's the first one to call him by his first name pretty quick, and is one of the few that maintains to do so. I think a couple of them keep using being the awkward introverted girl everybody wants to like because she's trying so hard. And of the people that go through the most character development, it's pretty obvious Miku gets the most of it. And it's because she's nice, she's trying her best, but she's there's always this thing where she's always kind of just backing into a corner. She's backing herself. Nobody else is doing it, and they have to kind of force girls knock her out of the way, but then they still want to help her. And it ends up becoming this weird push-pull with Futaro in the sense that he understands what she's going through because he's awkward as shit too. But they don't want to force it. Miku never wants to force it, but she always tries to find subtle ways, whether it's getting the best score on a test or, becoming the person that he would like, that sort of thing. I think that's a universal idea. Love works in weird fucking ways. Most people don't just bulldoze their way into love because it's an awkward thing. I know that because the first relationship I had, I was not prepared for it. God, I hate remember being 15 or 16 and taking my test and finding somebody on there, and we ended up, dating for a few months, and it was weird. Beside the point. But I understand fully why someone like Miku would have a lot of fans, but as a character, why she would be so fascinating as a character, and why most people think she is the winner. So there's another one who's very forceful, and that's Ichika, and she gets, I think, secondary, because I think Itsuki is the one who gets introduced. Miku gets the most. Ichika gets a lot. And it's very subtle. She's an actress or an aspiring actress, and she takes over the role of family well-to-do because they're trying to separate from their dad, but she can, drop out of school or do well enough that she can still do acting roles in commercials and whatever. And she takes it upon herself to provide for the family and do what's best. But the problem is that everybody else is kind of slowly falling for this guy, and she can't reconcile whether she's actually believing those thoughts or not. It reminded me a lot of Rise from Persona 4, where she didn't know who the real her was, and she kept trying to kind of find different outputs and outlets rather than accept it. And then later on, it became a kind of a weird thing where she wants to help people out, but from the sidelines, she ends up doing things that go against her type. She starts being a little bit of a bitch. She has a kit that, and most of them can dress as them, and sort of, it's like if somebody's in trouble, they can kind of work with them and, have their wig or have their outfit or talk like them or whatever. Some are better than others, but they try to help and do that. She has an entire kit. So in the span of like a second, she can just flip the switch. But it's obvious when it's not her and it's somebody else, or it is her, and eventually it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that she starts using that to her advantage and starts to lie quite a bit. A lot of these situations, like Futaro is going to meet somebody and she takes the initiative and says, no, you like me, or you like the person that I'm portraying is not me, but it's totally me. Fall for me. So it's kind of deceitful in a weird way. And then, I mean, I like her, but the slovenly behavior and the weirdness kind of just drive me away. And there are people that do like Ichika because she is forceful in a way, but it just becomes a bit of a crutch in her sense. There's Yotsuba, who is just intensely cheerful, intensely dumb, intensely energetic, and just basically me when I was a kid. I had all the energy, I had no outlets for it, but the difference is she wants to help everybody. And it becomes a problem because she just kind of fades into the background a little bit, and you like her, but you just think, why is she doing everything else? You got 2 or 3 characters that are doing so much, but then Itsuki and Yotsuba kind of just they're there, but they're not there. And then you forget that there are times when Yotsuba is there and they actually focus on it. You kind of feel, okay, now I can see why things are feeling a little awkward, is because the three of these people, and I'll get to the last one in a minute, have such forceful personalities. One of them forceful in the opposite direction, too unforceful, too meek that you almost feel sorry for her in a way. And then Itsuki and Yotsuba are generally the most well-adjusted when it comes to Futaro. It's like they accept that he's there, and Yotsuba actually accepts him more because she's the nice one. She doesn't say anything bad. She just wants the sisters to work together. They want Futaro to be there, and there's nothing wrong with Yotsuba at all, except that she keeps getting herself into stupid situations with different clubs and all this other stupid shit that it feels like she's driving her up a wall and burning herself on both ends, which is really bad. But her interactions end up becoming very poignant because Futaro and her don't really have any issues. They're not like antagonistic at all, and that's because Yotsuba is generally liked by everybody, and there's nothing wrong with her, which contrasts greatly with the final quintuplet, Nino, who by and large is a freight train of emotion. And good fucking Christ, what do I even say about this? Nino was the character I liked the least, and then almost ended up liking the most by the end. But I recognize that I like Miku more still, just because Nino's a fucking bitch. But I recognize in a way, unlike Ichika, who's trying to be deceitful, Nino, it dawns on her almost like infatuation in a way. And love does start as infatuation on an occasion. The just complete disregard she has for everybody else in the family when it comes to, hey, I like Futaro and I'm the first that's going to confess to him, or I'm going to confess and I'm not going to stop. Miku waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and then does it at the end. Nino, when she finally realizes it, just goes up to him one day and says, I like you and I love you and I'm not going to take no for an answer, so get over it. So it becomes like a weird thing where it's like, does she actually like him, or does she like the idea of him? And then she doesn't like push people out of the way. She actively goes and does shit, like join his freaking line of work. I mean, I'll give her some respect, and that she wants what she wants, and it's kind of refreshing in a way that we don't have the tsundere that just like, she stays tsundere for so just long enough, and then the button flips, and then she just becomes almost yandere and just almost stalkerish, but not in the murder hobo way, which is refreshing, because again, Ichika felt like she was conniving and backstabby. Nina would do that, but accepted it face value and always said so. So you have these 5 competing personalities and 5 different kind of, it's like these weird wavelength. If you had all 5 characters like kind of lined up, and you would, how do you monitor all of them? How do you give them screen time? And unfortunately, I do think Yotsuba and Itsuki get less of it, because you have to do a lot of the work to change Nino. You have to do a lot of the work to change Miku, and you do a lot to change Ichika into kind of a conniving bitch. There's also this kind of subtext where they sort of knew who he was, sort of do know, but don't express it, do express it. So there's a lot of like competing angles. So eventually what ends up happening is they start to all realize it. It all dawns on them that they're all competing. You know, the second season is just them like accepting, okay, we're done with this whole getting good grades subplot. Let's just get to the point. And to an extent, that is very rushed, as is the ending. Because the way the ending works is you get the festival, you get 5 separate, like, if you choose this is the side of the story. What ends up happening is the same story. It's told from the perspective of the 5 characters, because they go through these push-pulls of this person gets a date with him, and then they get into an argument, or this happens, and they annoy each other. They eventually just realize they all like him, or they suspect they do. So how do they go about it? Like I said, Ichika starts lying and starts being a conniving bitch. Nino just bulldozes through everything devil may care. Itsuki kind of takes that, like, I just want to be friends role, but she realizes it, sort of, but will stand up for herself. Miku is just trying to deny it for the entirety of the thing, and you feel bad in a way, because it's like, there's nothing wrong with you, just don't, you know, that sort of thing. It's like, god damn it, just say it. It was like watching Catherine, or playing Catherine, and he would have solved his problems if he did just flat out said, I have a girlfriend, you know. Miku could have just up and said it, but no, it just becomes this like, and eventually she will confess, and that's how we get to the ending part. Yotsuba is the likable girl that tries just doing everything, and she gets along with Futaro the best, honestly, because the thing that the show is trying to show us is that he knows there's somebody from his past he can't let go because they changed him. The anime and the manga both show that through some weird shenanigans, they have these like weird urban legends, like if you do this campfire thing, then they will date forever, or if you hug themselves underneath a bell, they will become wedded, and you get these like flash forwards that he's already made his choice, and there are these subtle hints of what he's going to do. And after a while, I'll get to the ending by saying that a lot of the criticism that I read was that it was rushed. This was not meant to be a longer series. It ended up becoming so goddamn popular that he kept writing, that the author Nei kept writing it. But through circumstances with his wife, I believe, and childbirth, he just said, no, I need to finish this in a hurry. So a lot of the stuff that was in seasons 2 and the movie coincided with the manga just being run really fucking fast. So a lot of the extra stuff that the characters could have gone through, even though they were proceeding, like the second season proceeds really freaking fast. It comes like 0 to 60 in kind of a way. But the movie does like overstay its welcome a little bit in that regard. So I would say the manga does okay, but it only does just enough because they're trying to keep a mystery. They're trying to keep you at bay. You will, like, you kind of compete with yourself as like, who would make the best, you know, who would make the best bride of these 5 people? Which one do I like the most? You know, you get these little questions as the characters slowly start peeling away at the different layers and growing as characters. The subplots of all the grades and getting the exams and shit is just a backdrop for all of this, and understanding who Futaro likes and who likes him, and it ends up being all of them. And then you have just all these other little things. It's not a perfect setup because, again, you're running up against real life. And I've had this with other creators too. It's like real life gets in the way of shit. You can't expect the best thing. Now, how they get around the ending is the festival, and the school festival thing is a cliche, which I wish that shows like this would get over with it, but I understand it. It's a part of Japanese culture. It's a big deal. It makes sense. So what ends up happening is after all of the girls spend an entire school trip basically just fawning over them, was undercutting their relationship to try and get this person to do this thing and do this thing and do this thing. Futaro just accepts it and says, look, I know that you all like me, but this has to end. So he just decides, give me some time to make a decision. Whether he's already made that or not, there was discussion as to whether he'd already made his decision and was pussyfooting around the issue. There was, does he know who he likes and he's waiting to figure out? Does he know and he's stringing them along, which I don't think is the case, to be honest with you. The idea being that he never figures out who the main girl is, though they tell you in different ways. You have to kind of piece it together. That's where the mystery part comes in. The author already had someone in mind, and this is what drove people off the wall, is that he gives them is equal, or in most cases 3/5 of the cast, an equal chance of winning. But they can't. The worst thing the show could have done, the manga could have done, was not give you an ending. And as much as I like stuff like Tenchi Muyo, other than, obviously saying Ryoka is the main one, they should just go together, they never really fully commit to it. And there are some shows that don't commit. I am reminded of Ichigo 100%, where it actually committed to an ending. After 160 some volumes, it finally, or chapters or whatever, and it just said, nope, we actually picked somebody and we're going to do it come what may. So even despite the fact he was trying to hurry through the ending, which it does in a way, they still give you a decisive ending. The way they frame this is they try to curb all of the subplots into kind of a choose your own adventure situation. So the manga and anime proceed in kind of the same fashion. You start seeing Futaro basically say to them all, I will make my decision, give me some time. You start seeing events from different perspectives of different characters, so that there's still kind of this who wins in a way. Who gets the win? And it proceeds, and you start seeing things like reconciliations with their stepdad, or you start seeing little things like, hey, this person was a dick earlier, let's be friends, or do shit. They start feeling their own feelings, and little hints start to show that the show's already made, the author's already made their mind up, but isn't going to give away the ghost right away. I understand the criticism of not telling you until the very end, giving you the absolute end, and then just rug pull. That's if you're going under the assumption that, oh my god, this person should have won. They had all the stuff. I'll just give it right away. So again, I have a spoiler warning for this, but you get to see all 5 side stories. Now, they're not what ifs. They are definitive. These are events that happened during the festival, all from the quintuplets' different perspectives. So they all either confess or they feel feelings for Futaro, and he accepts them, but he can only choose one. And he does choose one. And he ends up choosing Yotsuba. And while I understand the reasoning as to against, why didn't they pick one of the, I think for most people, the prevailing theory was Miku first, Ichika or Nino second, particularly Nino, Ichika third, Yotsuba would have been third or fourth, give or take, and then Itsuki fifth. Itsuki felt like a red herring. And I kept thinking through the anime, because I'd read the manga first, I kept thinking they were going to fuck with me and do an Itsuki ending, which would have been okay, but would have felt flat, but I would also have respected the anime for going for a different ending. So if you're wondering if the manga and anime end the same, they do. But that's not a bad thing. Because, as I said, Itsuki would have been the least likely because they don't really give her anything to go on that really gets that, forward momentum. And it just feels like Itsuki just sits there in the, hey, I like you, but I kind of hate you, but I kind of like you, but we're just friends kind of thing. You can do that. You can like somebody without loving them. It's possible. I know it sounds hard, but you can. So she develops feelings for him, but never acts on them. So what the show did, and specifically the anime version, Itsuki's like the first, or like the last one. She's technically the youngest, so that's why they framed it that way. But they always frame her in like the opening shot. They would frame her as the main girl. It's a red herring the entire time. I would have bet you that if the anime was going to do a separate ending, they would have gone for Itsuki just to fuck with the Miku fans or the Nino fans. But it makes sense that they didn't, because Itsuki never acts on her stuff. And having, like I said, this is sort of a mystery. Some shows just, if they don't just definitively say it outright, I am kind of annoyed when harem shows go with the obvious girl. And Itsuki had such obvious main girl energy because he didn't really have anything else to her name. It just started becoming annoying. It became less annoying because they had so many other characters to focus on that she went into the back burner, but it just became like, okay, unless the anime is going for a separate ending, I don't really care. So Itsuki was the character I didn't care for at all, and none of the extra subplots and fun things would have kept her from winning. Ichika was another one I didn't want winning because the turnaround and the 180 of conniving people and being a liar and being a complete asshole, because there's something just completely wrong about conniving your way into pushing everybody else away through deceit to get what you want. To constantly keep saying, no, I don't want this relationship. No, I don't want this. Stop telling me that, Nino would keep telling her, hey, I like this guy. Hey, I like this guy. Miku would keep saying, I like this guy. I like this guy. Ishika would keep saying, all right, that's fine. That's fine. That's cool. And then later on, she would just say, no, honestly, Ichika has feelings for you while dressed up as Miku the whole time. It's just fucking ridiculous. And it's just like, you're predicated on a lie. Your life is based on, your entire profession at this point is being someone else. And, Futaro understands that. He sees through the lie and is not going to accept that. And honestly, that's fine. Because I don't think I'd like somebody who is a complete deceitful douchebag in the first place anyway. Because if you like somebody, you don't go through that level of mess to go with them. And I think Nino, to an extent, follows suit. Nino is just so goddamn forceful, it becomes so obvious that it just becomes this is her feeling. It becomes an infatuation with somebody else, but then it becomes an infatuation with the main character. But the question is he as infatuated with her? Not really. They slowly kind of bridge the gap, and I can understand why people would think that Nina would be a choice, because eventually the walls break down and she's bulldozed her way into that. And there's something to be said. I'm not saying that doesn't happen or couldn't happen, but the fact that it tries so hard, much like Ichika does, but from a more forceful frontward assault kind of way, I don't know if it would have worked. And even respecting Nino after the first season being a complete dickhead the entire time, into going into the second season where you're just kind of like, okay, I can kind of see it, but I kind of don't see it. It just becomes I get why people like her, and I ended up liking her too, but I don't want this to be the thing. It just wouldn't have fit. And then there's Miku. And yeah, I would have wanted Miku to win. And much like Ichika and Nino, Miku ends up in the too forceful situation. It ends up almost feeling too good to be true because Miku ends up facing herself as trying to become somebody worthy of Futaro instead of like just accepting that they're friends, but she's always trying to change. She's always trying to do things, but that she always kind of pushes herself away too much so that they do end up becoming friends and people that they can rely on, but it becomes an awkward situation. There's just this awkward push-pull that never ends up getting resolved, and it just becomes uncomfortable. And again, most of the issues with most of those characters, the last three specifically, are that he's put on a pedestal by them. He's not really acknowledging them and their feelings other than, hey, they're girls and I don't want to feel bad about them. Which brings me to Yotsuba. And Yotsuba wins for many different reasons. And yes, I could say that the ending is a little rushed and they put a lot of effort into Yotsuba way too late. And that's true. The ending, as I've stated, was brought about by circumstances beyond the author's control. He was burnt out and was dealing with, his wife giving birth to a child. There's no way around that. He prioritized that and still had to finish the manga and said, I'm just going to finish it at hell or high water, be damned. And while I know that's frustrating, the idea ends up at play that he'd already known who the end game character would be. And they're little subtle hints, despite the fact that everybody else is so forceful. The fact that she's in the background the most of the time, there's still signs that the character Yotsuba was doing was going to end up being the one. Not even she ended up being the one, even like, say, 80% of the way through the show, they end up just giving it away and saying she was the first one and she talked to him the most and they became the friends and whatever. She tries to push him away only after he confesses, but she doesn't take anything of it. None of their interactions together are, I want you to be with me and I'm going to make you this, like a Nino or an Ichika would, in an undercutting fashion or a steamroll kind of fashion. And she never kind of sits back and just waits for things to happen like Miku. She just exists in a way as a friend, much like the Itsuki thing. But Itsuki is still just playing the, I don't like this guy, it's kind of dumb, Futaro and Yotsuba never have that. They like being around each other. They like each other's company. They work to be helpful to each other. There's the give and take that I talked about with Ichika, Nino, and Miku not being there. Miku to an extent, but it still felt like she was trying to be this ideal person. Yotsuba was never the ideal person, never tried to be. She was herself. And that was the thing. Whenever they were together, whether their relationship, Futaro never had to question being around her. They were just friends. They were just being together. They just liked each other's company. And then it dawns on him that, hey, this is a great thing. And I know that you've probably gone through some shit and this might be too much for you, but I think you're the one I like the most. And I don't think he ever figures out that Yotsuba was the first girl, right? But we as viewers and Yotsuba herself knew all the time, but she pushed herself away because she thought she wasn't good enough. So the rest of the manga, in a clumsy way, admittedly, goes through the rigmarole of some of the characters not accepting it and doing really quickly. And the movie does struggle with this quite a bit. They spend a lot of time on the 5 ways this could go, the 5 examples, and do their own thing. But then Yotsuba gets picked, and they have 30 minutes or so left of the movie to sort of talk about it, but sort of not. Again, the manga is very just very quick. It goes from 0 to 60 really fucking quickly. And again, a lot of that has to do with the circumstances. But they've already picked. So they go on their own dates and they do their own things. And yeah, the awkwardness is there, but you realize that it just fit. It just worked. They, as people, accepted each other as who they were. They weren't trying to be the idealized versions of the other people. They saw through each other's bullshit, is what I'm trying to say. And again, this is why Ichika and Nino would not have worked. Miku would have been an option if she would at least have given herself more credit and at least tried to see things from Futaro's perspective rather than just wait for the ideal time, which came way too fucking late. Itsuki almost never tried and accepted way too late that, yeah, no, I'm not even going to do it. So Yotsuba being the one picked made the most sense. I thought the anime version would have still struck me as a bit of like maybe they'll give Itsuki the rub here to change it from the manga. So if you're wondering if the manga and anime are different, no. But again, it's one of those things where this show spoke to me on a certain level where all the grade stuff and appeasing their father and doing all that subtext just slowly drives away, and then it just becomes a mystery of who gets the one, the varying levels of this person. I like this person more, and I like this person, and I like that. But you start seeing those kinds of things develop, and that's what really season 2 really just focuses on after a while. And it's just like, you know what? More power to it. It doesn't try to hide it. It has this facade of being this thing about the grades and all that. No, it's about who is the one that he goes for, and does it make sense in the end. We can quibble and complain if it wasn't the character we personally liked, because again, I liked Miku, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the show didn't do the right thing, because again, trying to foist a relationship on a person, whether they are accepting or not, is wrong. It has to just kind of naturally happen. Because are you willing to take that next step? You have to be willing to have some force behind you, but some of the characters tried way too hard, way too forcefully in different ways, and that's what drove them away. So for me, the biggest thing about this show was just this uncertainty and just this sense that like I was feeling things. I felt like this with Lull in the Sea. I'm actually recording this before I do Lull in the Sea, but the same thing happened. When shows get romance right, it's usually multiple characters making sense, whether you want them to succeed or not, but also having the courage to stand by your convictions. Because some harem shows, when you find a main girl, they're the main girl right away. Some shows, you have a main girl, then you have like one or two other ones that may or may work, and then they don't. But then the show doesn't even try. It doesn't even end properly. I will say, rushed or not, this show ended. The manga ended. It made a choice. And that sort of, oh my god, I know that they're going to end it. They have to make it definitive, and they do. They stick the landing. Clumsily, admittedly, but they stick the landing, and I respect it. The fact that I was going for this ride 2 times over because I'd already watched, or I'd already read the manga and thought, okay, that was cool. I was not expecting that. To feel that all over again, just to see if there would be a different ending, I didn't think that would happen. But the curiosity was getting to me the more I saw it. The fact that a show like this, is it as good as Spy Family? Is it as good as Bebop to me? No, but for some reason, this thing would hook me in to the point where I wanted to keep watching. I wanted to get home from work, or I would keep staying, doing stuff at work and keep thinking, well, I want to see what happens with this character and this character, or what are the relationships at play? Because I even knew what the manga did, and I'm still sitting there going, I want to see if they do something different. That kind of cool edge to a show that grips you from end to end and doesn't stop. That's something that rarely happens in a romance, because sometimes it's You already know it's just going to be one person, or you already know it's going to be the main girl, or you already know that they're not even going to give you an ending because that's what most harems do. The fact that I already knew that they already had an ending and it could have been different was cool. It wasn't different, but I was still gripped. I was just engaged with the way the show was very fast and very sleek. It didn't have a lot of fat on it. Sometimes it rushed way too fast, but not to too much of a detriment. I think this is one of my favorite shows of all time. Is it the best one? No. Is it the best made one? No. But I would hard pressed, just for a gut feeling, to just want to keep watching or keep reading. This is something that I wanted to keep reading. This is something that I just wanted to keep doing. So much so that I wanted to talk about it after I got done. I watched the finale of season 2. I watched the movie. I did this podcast. That never happens. So whether this is the best show I've ever seen or not, it is the one that's stuck with me the most when I think about it. And I think even when I'm watching other things, I'm probably going to come back and think about this a lot. Even though I know exactly what happened, and I might never watch it again, I'm still going to think, you know what? There was that time I watched this show and felt this way. That's rare. So this is one of my favorite shows of all time, especially top 3. I don't get this excited for shows all that often. So is this the best? I don't know. Is this going to be everybody's show? I don't know. Maybe just not having the character you want win is enough to drive you away. But you know what? I enjoyed the hell out of the show more than I thought I would on a rewatch. But that'll do it for me. And I will see you guys later. Citizen Strife, signing off.